guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian. This is the 15th episode of my series where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it has, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. So if you've seen my Freestyle Fellowship video, you might remember I dedicated a bit of time to the now defunct underground hip-hop collective Hellfire Club, which in turn mostly featured members from the legendary Project Blowed. While I'll get around to videos specifically dedicated to some of the other members like Open Mike Eagle and Rap Ferreira, formerly known as Milo, but I wanted to start with someone that both of those guys haven't hesitated to list as a top influence, which is the LA veteran Busdriver. While hip hop is a genre with all sorts of characters with different personalities, backgrounds, and motivations, it would be hard to argue how enigmatic Busdriver is. While somebody like Nas obviously has a legendary voice that's built for hip hop, you had that situation about a decade ago where your old Droog debuted on the scene, and a lot of people actually thought it was Nas in disguise due to the similarity in their voices. I can definitely hear that, and even somebody like Ghostface, who probably has my single favorite voice in hip hop, he even famously had the situation with Action Bronson where they went back and forth over the similarity of vocal tones, and he's even admitted that he heard Action Bronson on the radio and thought it was him. Of course, that's completely expected and understandable, and personally, I don't think it takes anything away from any of the artists mentioned, since they all have their own unique personality and approach. However, despite there being a few rappers that exist in the same wheelhouse as Busdriver, like Cloud Dead, Freestyle Fellowship, and even Danny Brown to a degree, really, Busdriver is the kind of guy who, whenever he comes on a song, there's really no chance you're gonna mistake him for somebody else. Not only does he do patterns and inflections the vast majority of MCs wouldn't even dream of trying, but his vocal tone is so unique and idiosyncratic that these things combined make him one of the most distinct artists in the genre. There's countless clips of him in the late 90s or early 2000s at Project Blowed just absolutely tearing up these ciphers and freestyles, and it's really dope to see how his wordy, jazz-like flow used to be used in this off-the-top street rap context. When I was introduced to Busdriver, it was with his 2014 album Perfect Hair, and it would be years until I even realized he actually debuted way back in 1999 with Memoirs of the Elephant Man. While he has a handful of projects in between that one and Perfect Hair that I've since discovered and enjoyed and are definitely worth your time, this album is his magnum opus in my opinion. I actually have really enjoyed a lot of his work post Perfect Hair, and he actually had a really dope experimental album that came out this year that you should give a spin. However, most of his work after this point is a lot more loosely structured, and I feel like for better or worse, they're a bit more avant-garde. And one thing you have to give Driver is that he never fails to try new things even with 25 years in the game. To me, it's kind of a different gear in my brain I put on for his more progressive albums where the tracks are long and abstract. Perfect Hair might still be a bit out of your comfort zone if experimental hip hop isn't really your thing, but I definitely think it's his most accessible album. Honestly, it's kind of hard for me to look at objectively because I've enjoyed this album and Busdriver's creative approach to rapping for so long I'm just used to it. I forget that someone who's never once heard a Busdriver putting on this album isn't going to hear it in the same way I do. I think it partially depends on how much you value and personally enjoy experimental music. If you're the type of person who hears someone rapping in a way you've never heard, that doesn't mesh with your brain, and you go, "What is this? This is horrible," you probably won't love this one. But if you're the type that hears a person rapping in a way you've never experienced and you get really excited because you're a fan of rappers who take risks and do something nobody else is, I definitely recommend Perfect Hair. It isn't really just the impossible to replicate flow that makes Busdriver so dope and original to me, but he also has one of the densest pens in the game. He's pretty much on Aesop Rock level of obscure references and deep, heady verses that could take days to decipher. Coincidentally, Aesop Rock actually turns up on this album on Ego Death, along with another rapper that I've compared Busdriver to in a different light, Danny Brown. This is easily the grimiest and most noisy song on the entire thing, with this monstrous, ground-shaking beat that all three legends devour with their distinct styles and energies. The rest of the instruments on here are more ethereal and colorful, and it's one of many albums in this subsection of LA indie-based hip-hop where the beats are electronic and forward thinking, but occasionally incorporate elements of more mainstream production too. I think albums like Perfect Hair are perfect examples to combat the notion that anyone who listens to anything other than pop rap or drill must like boom bap or 90s Nas style hip hop. I, for one, enjoy a lot of drill, be it from New York or the UK or Chicago, and I was big on guys like Chief Keef and Fredo Santana when they came onto the scene. Me and my friends can enjoy and appreciate someone like Playboy Carti. In fact, we were massive fans of songs like Fetty or the Talk Icy Twat remix when they dropped, but we were also giant fans of stuff like Pro Era and Mick Jenkins. As fun as the SoundCloud rap could be, those more dedicated acts are the ones that really inspired us to start rapping in the first place, and it would ultimately be an essential moment for sparking my love for hip hop. I was a massive fan of Draco the Ruler and would probably get a vinyl of his if I saw it at a record store. He had one of my top albums of last year, and I think he was an insanely clever and talented lyricist. He didn't do anything even slightly resembling boom bap, yet he actually also worked with Danny Brown as well as Earl Sweatshirt because he understood that there's a wide spectrum of personalities and styles in hip hop that are all equally valid. But honestly, Busdriver has such an alien flow, it could make somebody like Danny Brown sound like Cameron. If you're the type of person who first heard Danny Brown and found it grating or hard to listen to, but then over time it grew on you, I would definitely try giving Perfect Hair the same treatment. Personally, once his off-kilter style grew on me, it made me appreciate the Hellfire Club tracks with him even more, because I have an affinity for rappers who really stick out on group tracks. I can't think of ever hearing a Driver verse that didn't make my head spin, especially on Perfect Hair. Like on the opening track, which starts the project off with one of my favorite instrumentals on the whole thing, which has this lumbering, stuttering beat that Busdriver just dances over. I realize I made a bit of a habit of grabbing verses that start off the album to share, but I think it's because how you start an album is arguably the most important thing. If you grab people's attention right from the first moment and can hold it, it can determine whether a listener keeps going with the experience or not. Busdriver gives a masterclass in this department with "Hi, I'm Reagan. I don't rap for free, and listen, I've got a bachelor's degree, but you knew that, come on. And still you never would admit how sick I've become. This year my pigment's bluer. What am I, a crip from Hoover? Oh no, it's a malignant tumor. Ah, I knew it, come on. And still you never would admit how sick I've become." He uses the "never would admit how sick I've become" at the end of every few lines. And there's also multiple interludes within this song where Busdriver comes in talking about how much various equipment, background singers, and studio time for the album cost, which at first might sound a bit weird, but when you actually listen to the numbers he's quoting, you quickly realize they're absolutely absurd. Like when he says, "This is Perfect Hair by Busdriver. It cost $0.146 million US dollars to make." Or the backup singers used on tracks 1 through 3 cost 3,500 US dollars per take. The sense of humor this album has is perfectly complemented by the more poignant and personal moments. Like on Motion Lines, which might be my favorite song on this whole thing. It's definitely the single most accessible song on here for an average hip hop fan. I even think it's probably Busdriver's single most accessible song in general. His lyrics are still witty and dense, but they're all directed towards this breakup he's describing, and it's a beautiful example of how a true poet is able to take a concept like the end of a relationship, which is one of, if not the single most common type of song in modern music for every genre, and describe it in a way pretty much nobody else has. What really ties this track together is the hook, which encapsulates all the pain and self-loathing in the 5-minute song in just 2 haunting lines. "I'm impossible to love and cannot keep an open mind, so you left me where I was, still shredded in your motion lines." The watery, atmospheric production on Perfect Hair was handled by a number of people, including Busdriver himself, as well as Candy Claw, Grey Hat, Great Dane, Ike Owens, Jeremiah J., Kenny Siegel, Mike Gow, Mono/Polly, and Riley Lake. There aren't too many features on here, but with a personality as distinct and entertaining as Busdriver, you really don't need much help, but there's still a handful of appearances by fellow artists. As I mentioned earlier, Danny Brown and Aesop Rock are two, but we also have Open Mike Eagle, Verbs, and Pegasus Warning. However, if you count the bonus tracks, there's also additional features by POS of Doomtree, as well as Del the Funky Homo Sapien, best known for his collaboration with Gorillaz, his work with hieroglyphics, and of course his work with Deltron 3030. As much as I enjoy this entire project, I think I would have to name my three favorite songs as Retirement Ode, When the Tooth-Lined Horizon Blinks, and Motion Lines. Thank you for watching my 15th video. The next album I'm going to talk about is actually going to be the most recent one I've talked about at all so far, and while I'd still consider it an underground cult classic kind of, it's a completely different scene from guys like Billy Wood, Shabazz Palaces, or Busdriver. So be sure to tune in next time to see what that is, as well as leave a like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off of this underground gem are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time, okay? Alright.